Sorry, and then one stand. Here we go. All right, let's arrive. Since it's short time, just be brief here. The body's always present. So when we come into the posture or the breath or sounds, really the five senses more than the mind sense, we rest our attention and then our being, sense of being, and just one point. And that one point could be kind of a holistic point, sense of heaviness of the whole body. I'm in a chair right now, so on my sitting bones and the back of my thigh a little bit, thighs. And then let yourself just rest into this present moment. All right, good morning, everyone. Still morning where you are. Let's start actually I know I'm supposed to be doing the Dharma talk now, but still I'd like to have a little Sangha time. So I did see that Hollywood Square is gonna start again. For those old enough to remember the game show, I usually call it the misogynistic Hollywood Square because they were always so misogynistic in the 70s to me, or 80s, or whenever. And but we're gonna do the non-misogynistic rectangle. So like the square, say hi to the people around you, but then don't forget other people, and then the bigger square, I like to say. So, on three, you just unmute and then say people's name, and that way we're really connecting to each other and hear each other's voices. Right? Does that make sense? What I'm asking? Okay, here we go. Go ahead, unmute and take it away. All right.
Hi,
Hello,
good
Stick. Hello,
Hi, Emily.
morning,
Sangha.
Chris.
Hello.
Hi,
Susan.
Ray.
Hey,
Emily. Hi,
Ian.
Chet.
Hey, G.
Hi.
Eric,
Hi, Chris.
Claudia. Hey,
Yeah.
Good
Morgan.
morning.
Lisa. Hey, Casey. Hey, Jesse. Hey, Hamza. Hey, Fumio. Hey, Dana. All right, I got everyone. Oh, Jet. I missed Jet. All right. Ray. All right. All right. How was that for everyone? Okay, so you guys heard each other at a little Sangha time. Actually, let me put these on. I forgot. You might not hear my heater so much. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. Given our current times, I have to say that I'm very tired of giving talks about how to practice in challenging times. Seems like those come up often. And indeed, at least for myself and people I know on and off the cushion or in Sangha, practice Sangha or otherwise, it's a really difficult time in such not only broad, but deep ways. And so I wanted to talk about the three meditative qualities of the Eightfold Path, which is, of course, skillful effort, skillful mindfulness, and skillful concentration. And as Stephen knows, at least when I was there in person, gosh, seemed like a long time ago now, I have a book on the Eightfold Path, and I've developed, supported by the Hamera Foundation since 2017, the reframing the Four Noble Truths as the engaged Four Noble Truths, and of course that includes the Eightfold Path. So I wanted to start by reading from chapter 2 on skillful views. I'm currently teaching a course. So the book arose out of a response, actually first to the sexual misconduct that was happening in 2017 in a lot of sanghas. And I was at a conference of Gen X teachers, and they brought in right use of power. People know that modality. It's created by Cedar Barstow, a social worker, and basically says that there's power in every situation, and so we want to be really aware of it. And one main point that I use mostly in this book is called up power and down power. So of course in our locations, social locations, power can shift in any moment. And so we want to be aware when we're in an up power, which was a location of more privilege, more power due to the privilege. And then when are we in the down power, lack of privilege, lack of access to privilege. And so that's important to know because it can shift in any time, for instance, as a female body and a person of color in the system of sexism and racism, I'm structurally, for sure, and in many situations in the down power. However, in this case, I'm in the up power because I'm the teacher and I have the microphone. So, but when we go to like Q&A, that dynamic changes because we come carrying our sense of power and privilege. And so we want to be aware of it. That's the issue. Really just aware of our location. It's not whether it's good or bad at this point, because, it's not really about judgment. It's about awareness and how do we use that skillfully and wisely and compassionately. There was I used it when the anti-Asian violence was very high during the pandemic. Called Lotus Rising from the Mud was a course. And then when George Floyd was murdered, then the Dharma being anti-racist. And then the students, we ran 2 courses of it, one course of each at Spirit Rock. And so people wanted a book to go with it. So that's how the book arose. So this is from chapter 2. As it speaks to what I want to talk about. So skillful view, transforming past seeds into future wholeness. Oh, the book is called Home is Here, I didn't say. Practicing anti-racism with Engaged Eightfold Path. When I was in my late teens, riding my bike to swim practice in a small college town in North Dakota, a car suddenly swerved up very close to me. As I wobbled on my 10-speed to adjust, a guy stuck his head out of the passenger window and yelled, oh yeah, content warning here, folks. Hey, chink, go home. I looked behind me and didn't see anyone. I thought, who is he talking to? I'm not Chinese. As I turned back to face the car, it sped off, leaving a trail of derisive laughter behind. That's when I realized he was talking to me. As the car sped away, a wave of shame came over me that was a mixture of the pain and sadness of being ridiculed and the shame of being confused. Even today, I often find confusion is mixed in with other feelings when I've been a target of discrimination or racism. I'm left confused because I was being myself, being in my own space, my own life, and suddenly the wholeness of being perfectly in the midst of belonging to life is torn by hatred. This incident happened in the early 1980s, after I'd moved from Cairo, Egypt, to the small, predominantly white Midwestern town. My father had recently left the U.S. State Department, USAID, by the way, just as an aside, to work at the local state college. Since my adoption at the age of 8 from Vietnam, I had lived mostly overseas in American embassy communities. In Egypt, I spent my weekdays going to the expat Cairo American College and weekends playing Marco Polo in the embassy swimming pool. We had diplomatic passports and traveled extensively throughout Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Everywhere I went, I was fully identified as American, often in revered ways, such as being able to go through special lines at the airports with my diplomatic passport, and then picked up and motored off by hired drivers. Perhaps it was because I wasn't born in the United States and had never lived in such a predominantly white town until then. But I had never experienced direct hatred like this before. This incident showed me that no matter how I viewed myself, others viewed me differently. And sometimes that view was filled with contempt. So I go on to say in this chapter that often when we're experiencing moments in which there's challenges and difficulty or trauma or traumatic experience, or when we're reliving a traumatic experience or challenging, difficult experience, often we're focused on the thinking of it. When someone says, "Oh, something happened to me," we want them to kind of replay the situation as a first question. Really, what happened, right? And I know when I relay happen, it's he said this, they said that, blah blah blah, and yet when the book is focused on healing from the impact of racism for all locations, and the book in particular focuses on Asian American and my own, and ended up being as little stories that start out each chapter like that. Because in the racial dialogue in the United States, Asian Americans are often not part of the conversation, and especially in Dharma circles. So it's very black and white kind of dichotomy in the US, except for certain topics. And so that's partly why the book is focused on Asian American experience. But when we are experiencing something and someone wants to hear about it, we focus on the thinking, when in fact, it's the rest of us that needs to have the container and the space to really experience what's going on. The book, in some ways, is based on, now I am a social worker and I've been trained to be a therapist, and I did my master's in 1999 and 2000. And at the time, Lenore Terr did a workshop. Do people know who Lenore Terr is? The Chowchilla incident. Do people know about the Chowchilla incident? I can't remember what year, probably in the 80s, I think it was. So there's a incident where, I didn't plan to bring up this bit, so I can't remember, but I think 20, 30 children in a school bus were abducted, and then they were like buried. And but some escaped, two escaped. And so they were rescued. And so Lenore Terr was the person who went and interviewed the children of a traumatic. And that's one of the first time in which children were asked their experience. Before that, people would ask their parents or their teachers. So they would ask adults instead of the children about traumatic experience. So Lenore Terr, talks about how when we need to recover from a traumatic experience, first you actually want to create a safety container, and then really the healing is the space to abreact, to have all the emotional and sensory experience so that you can process that, because in difficulty and trauma we contract, right? And this fits practice. When you're on the cushion and you're really suffering on the second day of a retreat or the third morning of a retreat, the practice in some way at that point becomes very visceral. And my experience, trying to really relax the body and not tense up so much, right? And in fact, to me, by the fourth day, which one teacher I heard in Zen called it the golden age of Zen. When we reach the fourth day, our body becomes more easeful. When concentration, the result of concentration, skillful concentration, is actually bodily ease. This is a very interesting thing. We think concentration is all like mind practice, but when its result is actually a bodily ease. And so my sense of it is much more, in some ways, the mind relaxes its desire to control and, fix everything, how I said, how I view other people. We're working so hard with the 5 hindrances but in a tight way. And when concentration is established, then actually we start to relax about things. That person still bothers you. Oatmeal every morning still bothers you, but it just doesn't impact you so much. And when that because you're calm and you're like, oh, dislike, oh, oatmeal again. It becomes not monotone, but just more like, okay, I accept that this is what it is. I realize I don't have control in this moment. And oh, by the way, on a retreat, I chose to be here. Oh, yes, that's right. And this is the result, right? And so we're able to, with concentration, the mind quiets, and so our body also is a result of that. Now, skillful effort, of course, helps us to make diligent effort towards skillful quality. And then skillful mindfulness, of course, as a practice, is we remember the bigger picture. Oh yeah, I signed up for this. Oh yeah, I'm concentrating on my breath. Or oh yeah, here's sloth and torpor. And so I know that I must remember the effort, the skillful effort is, in Zen in particular, is we, really get into our posture. Like we rest in the sitting bones instead of noticing that leaning back that because you're aversive to your painful knee or ankle, right? Or leaning forward, wanting something to be different. There's a nice fantasy going on. And so really take that kind of stable position. And so mindfulness reminds us to do that. And then what I like to call the quality of mindfulness is much more of that attending quality. It's a little bit managerial, but it's skillful manager. I like to call the quality of mindfulness in this, I use attending because it's when you attend to something, you're doing it in a gentle, kind way. My go-to analogy about mindfulness is you're kind of like the manager at a restaurant, right? You see the bigger picture and you remember the purpose of the bigger picture. But a good manager, sees milk has been spilled on the table 3, but a skillful manager, one, knows who to send over there. You wouldn't send the cashier to go clean up spilled milk. You would send the bus person, right? But you would say it in a like, hey, blah, blah, please go to clean up the milk. You want to do it nicely. Or, hey, I see the cashier is backed up. I need to send someone to help them, right? So the quality, so one, there's a sense of remembering the big picture and directing, but it's a very gentle, you want that to be that kind. And so the skillful one is the one in which is settled. So concentration gives us this ability to remember that we're present, right? And so to go back to this story, I do talk about it here as like the thing that I remember about it and the thing that still strikes me and the thing that does still come up for the most part around racist incidents is the thinking, right? And honestly, my first go-to in thinking is usually, did that really happen? So there's that internalized stuff where we question what's going on, right? And then you replay the story. And so the mind tendency is just to loop on the story. But if we're able to remember, right, to be mindful of the experience, we actually want to come down. So much of our living is our 5 other senses, right? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. So ear, nose, tongue, body. Mind. No, that's not. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Oh, and mind, I did count it off. My fingers changed on me. All right. So we want to come down from there and really experience that, the racing heart, right? Because I was, someone supposedly playfully swerving at you in a car when you're not protected is actually, that's a kind of violence. And that wobbling isn't just trying to adjust, that wobbling is, the adrenaline and post-adrenaline where you're shaking. And so you want to experience the body sensation, and you want to let that have its course. And that's why so much of trauma work is about, again, establishing a container of safety, a container of understanding, a container in which people don't have to defend what their experience is, a container in which they're deeply listened to and valued for what they're saying and what they're sharing, right? And a container in which they feel that they can respond fully. You know, the Zendo, you know, I went through, that's a meditation hall. When I was at Tassajara, you know, I went through a thing. I have had a lot of traumatic experience and big changes in my life, in which I was very sad and just crying all the time. And in fact, one time, I think by name, there's definitely some Zen people in here. In Zen, when you eat, you're in the meditation hall and you face out. And then you open up your bowls and it's all on the platform. It's called the kenton, that's in front of you. So getting out of your seat in the middle of a meal, very, very hard to do. And also everyone's facing out and looking at you during mealtime. Not supposed to, but you know, that's what happens. So one time I was just crying and like that sobbing or snot and everything. And the Soku, who's the head of the serving team, literally, I'm not exaggerating, brought me a box of Kleenex because I was just crying so much, right? And afterwards, I was talking to one of the teachers in practice discussion. And I was like, you know, I'm just a mess. I don't want to do this in the meditation hall. And I was telling her about that and how I really wanted to get up and leave because of, you know, not only, and shame, you know, so much of, we're taught in this society that, at least my experience is that it's, especially in public, which an orioki meal is, that we're not supposed to show our emotions, especially we're having difficulty, you know, and I know some of us, I know in the early days, I would carry myself like, you know, I got this in the Zendo. I'm a good practitioner, never act reacts, you know, it's just like, I know what I'm doing, I'm steady, I've got concentration, you know, I am settled. But I don't know, my experience of a lot of practice, especially in retreat, is, in fact, these days I say you want all that stuff to come up because it needs to be processed. So her answer was like, the Zendo can hold everything. The Zendo, the meditation hall, can hold everything. And this is why we wanted to create that container. You know, a lot of people in Zen who come to Zen retreat hall, everyone's facing the wall, and then there's like at least one person facing out. And they're always like, how come that person's facing out? And the idea is that they're there to actually be aware of the Hozendo, have that broad awareness and attend. And the person is, before the priest that comes that opens the Zendo, is the Ino, the head of the meditation hall. And again, this is where seniority, and by that I mean people with a lot of practice, you're an Ino because the belief is that you can attend to the people in the meditation. You're not there to go like this, even though it might feel that way in a Zendo. You know, yes, you're in charge of forms and stuff, but we want you to have that ability to do it in a gentle, kind way, to be a support, not to be a punisher, right? So this is why it's really important. So again, our container, how we create things. So this is my other point that I want to get to, because this is a short Dharma talk, is that these qualities are actually not just what we can do for ourselves, or it's only me that needs to be skillful effort, skillful mindfulness, and skillful concentration, right? It's something that we create together in Sangha, right? And Sangha isn't just when we all gather, but the container. I created the container in which you all got to connect to each other, right? And that was purposeful, right? That we're not just here to get information. You know, this is my idea of what today is, right? I'm not saying other ways of being together doesn't work. They're depending on the purpose, right? And one of my purpose today was to really remind us, and I think this is really important right now, is that how we meet this moment or what's going on in our lives, any moment, but especially the difficult ones, be the internal difficulty or external difficulty or the negotiation of those, is that we don't have to do it ourselves, you know? It isn't just a self-practice. It is more, my experience, more emphasized in Zen container practice, because we do everything together in Zen, right? And especially in the monastery, we can bathe together, right? So, and you know, in Japan, they sleep together in the meditation hall too. The room, the sutra reading room is off to the side, and that's where you spend your time. But you eat, bathe, and then you eat and sleep in the zendo, and then you bathe together even, right? So, and that's to help us remember that maybe it helps. At first, it might say, you might think, oh, I have no control, especially in a monastic or temple, right? There's a lot of hierarchy. But the fact is, if you understand it, and for me, I experience this in Asia a lot more, that everyone who has a position, this hierarchy position, realize that they're there to attend to you. They're there to create a container practice. Yes, sometimes that might seem really harsh, or because it's very directing, and sometimes the, you know, part of it is people purifying the way that they lead, in the way that they are they mindful of how they attend, how they give instruction, how they redirect, how they say this is a way that we do it here, you know? So is it in a friendly manner? Is it in a instructional yet accessible manner? Is it responding to conditions as opposed to this is how it is and everyone must follow, right? And so let us remember that it isn't, you know, we don't have to do it alone. And are we allowing others to support us? I would say that's the other part that is really hard, I think, both in life and in practice. That others here, you know, are here to support us. And are we entering this space to support others when we practice? And in fact, in some ways, you know, by the golden age of Zen, the 4th and 5th, and hopefully the 6th or many more days, you know, with concentration and then with mindfulness really strengthening, and the effort gets to relax, and the effort actually becomes much more compassionate, because the broader picture is we're in this together. We're doing this together, you know, and this can't happen unless each of us do our part and support each other to do our parts together. So the connection and the practice to support the whole of practice, and that's to me the oneness of practice, not this kind of oneness so much, though at time I do need to focus on this oneness for sure. But to me, the unification and is indeed the strengthening of the connection, not all about the strengthening of this one, right? Or even one other one, right? All right, thank you for listening. All right, I'm open to questions. Please raise your hand. All right, Fumio.
Thank you for the talk, Arend. I'd like to ask a question that I ask every Zen teacher. Everybody has different answers, and it's about shikantaza that you touched on. And actually, you opened the topic. So perhaps to ask the question, I'll use the manager metaphor that you brought. And so there are various ways to approach shikantaza. We could be like very, like the manager that only kind of watches all those people, and the manager is like, yeah, you know, do it your way, and I won't interfere at all, and I will just watch and let you figure it out. Or there could be more active manager that sees that hindrance somewhere, and oh, perhaps I should attend to this. And so my question is, what's your take, or how to find that balance between, you know, just surrender and doing some more active work?
Yeah, so you actually have the answer in your question. Yes, which is how do you balance that? And maybe I would go more, you know, I used to say balance, but to me, balance is that dichotomy. Do I surrender or do I, you know, leave it, you know, control, right? And life, so to me, that's kind of like the black and white. And to me, our life is we negotiate that swing. And I say when I'm at this end, I suffer, and I want to be at the other end. And then when I'm this end, I suffer, you know, and to me, the suffering is actually the edges of duality. And so our life is really letting go. I want the absolute to swing back the other way. And then when we try too hard to get the, you know, the relative, then we can suffer. When we hang on to the relative, you can hit relative, that's okay. But really, this is our life, right? Going like this. Of course, the thing is, when you remember there's a fulcrum, that's where the still point is. So that's one way that I would answer it. The other is that this is where skillful and wise and, you remember, and you know, right, sama, of course, means like appropriate, you know, like the correct, the appropriate response. So, and part of it then, so I don't like balance, I like harmonizing, because it gives us much more, not only a two-dimensional, but it gives us like, and there's a lot. And of course, our living is, I'm here, 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 I'm here. So I'm noticing everything. Wherever I am I aware of where I am? And am I aware that how much do I let go into the, you could say, the conditional, the karmic flow, right? And how much do I harmonize with that? So for many of us, we have to practice saying, all right, this is where I am. Because mostly I'm here and I think I want to be here, or I want to be here. Or I feel stuck in my idea that I'm here. That's the other thing, right? Part of the thing is breaking up to the delusion that I think I'm over there, but I'm actually over here, still in the middle, right? So that's part of the waking up of duality, or sorry, of delusion of duality and dichotomy. So that's, of course, one thing. So harmonizing, and then, you know, the idea of shikantaza is we're just with life as it is, which is, you know, is what I just said. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I wake up to the delusion. And a good manager or skillful manager, and you know, and the issue, of course, is classically, until we're Buddha, I'm delusional about wherever I am. And mostly because I think I'm here or here. And that's part of our biggest delusion. I'm separate. This is as separate as you can get, right? So a good manager actually waits to see what the busboy or bus person will do. A good manager has that settleness to let everyone be everyone and knows when to say, hey, do you know there's spilled milk? Yeah, they don't panic. A good manager doesn't panic every time something happens or feels like something has to be fixed. So that's part of our practice is, that's why, sorry, I keep talking about Zen. This is what happens, you know, when I'm in an insight place, I'm very Zen. And when I'm in Zen, I'm very insight, because I teach both, right? So part of it is that subtleness that comes so that we can first check. It is really useful to know this one, you know, and in some ways closely, or you know, Dogen says, you know, take the backward step and turn inward. When you perseverate too much on the outside, then it's time to look here at this one. So again, right, that this is why I like to try to remember what is the connection, what is the flow, what is the happening that's between my dualistic kind of perception of the world, right? So in Shikantaza, the myth, maybe I would go to say, as far to say the misunderstanding is Shikantaza, nothing happens. You're just there for everything. No. You know, we practice to know that we can be with everything, but our practice isn't that we should be with everything as it, and when we say as it is, we're not saying that it can't be different. We're just saying we have to know what it is first. And in restoration, you have to know what is harmful or hurtful first before you can restore. You know, in my Sangha, we're also doing, not right now, we're doing DBA, or Dharma being anti-racist, but this year our theme is healing, and we've been studying Paula Rai's book, the little book of Zen healing, Japanese Ritual for Beauty, Harmony, and Love. It's a kind of a accessible version of her thesis from a while back. But she, you know, she states healing begins at harm or hurt, right? And in fact, she even told a story in one of her talks, I think for Zen Center, about how she learned from her Roshi. He even says healing begins at death. And I would say my interpretation of that, and it turned out part of the story is that he had an illness, you know, he had cancer. But to me, it means you have to, the death of your delusion of how things should be. That's what we wake up to a lot, and as we talk about in Zazen. That's why you die on the cushion, you know. Very Zen. There's a Zen question. There we go. Zen answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right, Jet.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks so much for that talk, and I really resonated with the part when you were saying that it's not just about self-practice, it's about kind of awareness and compassion to others. And one kind of, I guess, struggle or something that's been coming up is a lot of my friends and family aren't actively practicing Buddhist, or I guess like diving deep the way that I am. Like right now I'm reading like the Heart Sutra translation by Thich Nhat Hanh. And sometimes after these sessions, some people like ask me like, "What did you learn like from this session?" And I don't even know where to begin without sounding like, I don't know, too esoteric like to them. So I'm not sure if, like, I'm trying to find ways to kind of cultivate that awareness and compassion in myself and others without being too, I guess, deep diving into like Buddhist concepts and words and stuff. And I'm not sure if that's something you've also run into as well, and any advice for that.
Yeah, so this is why I'll just say that my focus as a teacher these days, and is that it's not about information, you know. I mean, it's good. It's good practice to know the two this, the three that, the four that of Buddhism. It is. It's good practice. But it's actually okay, I'll tell it as another way. So I used to be an artist, or I used to make art, like painting kind of art, you know, this is my 20s and 30s. And I had a friend that took me, this is back in the 80s and 90s, right? Took me to see a Robert Reinman exhibit. Do you guys know who Robert Reinman is? He's a guy that paints everything white, right? And at first I was like, you know, like, this is in the, you know, MoMA, right? This is in an art gallery, this guy that makes everything white, right? Like, and then she said, no. You have to, you know, really kind of be with it. You know, and we get up close and look, and then there's seats around there. And so part of minimalism, which Robert Ryman's part of a way of art, is that it isn't actually, and in minimalism, interestingly, as one friend who is an art historian told me, came out of pop art, which you would think would be the opposite, right? Andy Warhol's epitome of pop art, where everything is bright and in your face. And minimalism, in some ways, this is my makeup now, that it's kind of the reaction where it's just everything's quiet. But the thing about them both, and which was so revolutionary at the time, is that art isn't there for rich people or people can afford it. Art is there as an interactive experience, right? So if we remember that here's what my response to your question, that like this experience is an interactive experience. Even when I was the only one talking, it's an interactive experience. And this is why, and we do it all the time anyways, right? This is why we look at people, we respond to, I got it, or everyone's like this, you're like, oh, better throw in a joke or do something to draw people back in. You know, we want this. And so if you focus on that as you talk to others, right, then naturally it comes forth that there's connection made. Of course, that's going to be hard when that other person doesn't want to listen to you, thinks they know better and all that, and that's why it's practice. And, you know, and by the way, saying no thank you and walking away, or, you know, not engaging can be a response. I'm not saying it can't be a response. To me, part of practice gives us a stability and skillful concentration, and skillful effort is, I'm going to make skillful effort here. I'm going to be a bit diligent because I want connection. And of course, the hardest thing is trying to connect with someone that seems like there's no connection, but I'm willing to make the effort because the compassion that's driving that is I want the connection. But if it's not happening, then, you know, it's skillful to say, thank you very much, right? And maybe it's the same on the cushion, you know? You have a pain, be it a physical, emotional, or mental pain, and you want to have that connection, but you want that to be a friendly, non-judgmental connection. And at times that connection doesn't work. So you say, I need to disengage and go do something else. But that's where when it's stable, right? Then doing all that and having it's not control, but having the agency, right? Then to do what you want to do in the manner that you want to do it. So the other thing would be the manner of what we do becomes more and more important as we practice. The how, not the what so much. That's my take. That's what my students get from me. Right?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. All right, I'm aware of the time, so do we take one more easy question, or maybe I'll make my answer smaller, shorter? Okay, I'll invite some, if you tend not to move forward, to go ahead. All right, let me see. Shall I end with something in this chapter? All right, I'll go ahead and read the end of this, just as a closing. I never told anyone about that, I call it the go home incident. In part because I had no framing to understand the context of systemic racism until I went to college and took ethnic studies a few years later. Given the fact that my parents were white and didn't have a sense of race consciousness, and the fact that this was the Midwest in the 1980s, I understood this situation and others like it as people being mean to me. And I didn't understand why. I had no frame of reference to help me view this in a different way. So much of our practice is actually reframing our experience, not from invalidation, but from clearer understanding, and often of the subtleties of things, right? And the contextualness of things. Well, this memory can still bring up a sense of fear and trepidation for me anytime I remember it. When I'm mindful, I clearly know that these feelings are old, and that currently I am not being threatened, and that I'm safe. It's as if there's a cut in your hand that hasn't healed. Every time something touches it, due to the tenderness of the wound site, it hurts even more or can reopen. We have to attend to it and let it heal fully. With such awareness that I'm safe in the present moment, I am attending to old harm. Such healing can support being able to respond with more in-the-moment agency when I am being physically threatened or being the target of microaggressions in the moment. For instance, I've been called chink and told to go home many times since that incident. Instead of confusion these days, if I answered at all, it would immediately be with, I am home. This is my home. As Asian Americans or people of color, it's important that each of us heal on a personal level from being targets of hatred and racist violence. We also need to apply skillful effort to understand, rectify, and overcoming harm and harming to all of the other social locations in the system of white supremacy, as racism impacts us all. This is true for other systemic injustices as well. Anti-racism is everyone's practice and is connected to other oppressive systems. A life of wholeness includes all. With Skillful View, we're given the engaged Four Noble Truths and karma as a framework for seeing how our personal experiences of the impact of white supremacy culture comes into being, both individually and collectively. Both individually and in collective contexts. Broadly, we could say that there are two methods in here. That the reduction method, which is breaking things down in small chunks, supports identifying and building the capacity to be with our memories or current experiences by viewing them in smaller and smaller, subtler and subtler chunks that make them manageable. The dilution method offers us an opening up of our views to support knowing how events truly are conditioned by larger systemic forces. Thus, they offer us ways to regulate how we can use relative and absolute, those dichotomies, to support us to negotiate the challenges of our lives. The middle way, as Buddhism is often called, is not some place per se. It's the freedom of knowing that our lives are the negotiation between relative and absolute, not to be stuck in one or the other point of view. The Skillful View is being open to all views of how harm and harming comes into being and how it can end. The engaged, skillful view reminds us to be inclusive, to make sure all beings know skillful view as innate. It can heal us from old hateful beliefs and actions that fragments us from this knowing. We need to make sure knowing skillful view and its intertwining other factors of the Eightfold Path are available to all. Thank you for your attention. All right. Who would like to dedicate the merit? Fumio, can I call on you? Or Kodo? Either one. Fumio, yep, you unmute it. Go for it then.
I was too fast. All right.
Or you guys can do Rochambeau and decide that
Well,
way.
okay. I can just take a
All
bit.
right. There
All
you go.
right. And I'll improvise. So,
Yes, of course.
all right. So,
All of life is.
I'd like to dedicate this merit to all beings that are suffering, to all of you, to all trees as well. And yeah, may we all practice well and find peace and happiness. Koda, do you continue?
I think you said it beautifully. And may all of our practices continue to release others and create that space for others to be safe and loved.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.
Here, everyone.
Who's,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Someone's going to send me the link.
You want a
Hey,
link to the
Stephen.
talk?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think we can manage that.
All right, great. Good to see you again.
Good to
It was
see you
hard to
too.
see your head. Your head was like that.
I
You're like
see
a
this
Q-tip
portion of
there.
me.
Yeah. All right. And the names of the others in the room? You're not all Dharma Deepa.
I'm Debbie Brodigan.
All right. Hi, Debbie.
And Robert Harvey.
Robert. All right. Have a good day. Thank
Take care.
you. I appreciate you.